Todor Zhivkov, 1911 to 1998, was one of the most durable leaders of the Eastern Bloc, ruling Bulgaria for 35 years. As General Secretary of the Bulgarian Communist Party, BCP, from 1954 until 1989 and later as head of state, Zhivkov created a political system that combined authoritarianism, economic modernization, and cultural engineering with unwavering loyalty to the Soviet Union. His long career illustrates not only the trajectory of Bulgarian communism, but also the patterns of survival and adaptation within the Cold War's socialist states. Todor Zhivkov was born on the 7th of September 1911 in the small village of Pravets, near Sofia, into a poor peasant family. His upbringing in rural Bulgaria left him with a deep awareness of social inequality and poverty, themes he later invoked in speeches to portray himself as a man of the people. His family was not wealthy, and like many rural children, Zhivkov's early life was marked by agricultural work and limited access to formal education. During the 1920s and 1930s, Bulgaria was politically unstable, marked by the legacy of defeat in World War I, territorial losses, poverty, and ideological polarization. The communist movement, outlawed and forced underground after the failed September uprising of 1923, attracted young radicals. Zhivkov gravitated to the Communist Youth League and eventually joined the Bulgarian Communist Party, BCP. These formative years exposed him to Marxist ideology, but more importantly immersed him in the tightly knit networks of the underground movement that would later provide him with opportunities for advancement. When Bulgaria allied with Nazi Germany during World War II, the communist underground organized resistance. Zhivkov played an active role in partisan activities, particularly in organizing armed bands in the Sofia region. His involvement in the resistance earned him revolutionary credentials. Although his role was not as prominent as that of leaders like Georgy Dimitrov, his loyalty and reliability during this period established his reputation within the movement. The arrival of the Soviet Red Army in September 1944 transformed Bulgaria's political landscape. The monarchy was abolished, the Fatherland Front, a communist-led coalition, took power, and the BCP quickly became dominant. Zhivkov, now a seasoned cadre with partisan experience, gained positions in the security services and party apparatus. From 1944 to 1954, Zhivkov steadily climbed the ranks of the Bulgarian Communist Party. He served in the Ministry of the Interior, which oversaw the police and state security organs, giving him influence within the repressive machinery of the regime. He also gained administrative experience as first secretary of the Sofia Party Committee, which placed him in charge of the capital's political life. This position was particularly important. As head of the Sofia Party organization, he built networks of loyalists while demonstrating his administrative skill. Unlike some ideologically rigid communists, Zhivkov showed a pragmatic organizational approach. He was seen by some Soviet advisors as a competent bureaucrat rather than a flamboyant ideologue. In 1954, following Stalin's death and the subsequent reshuffling of power within the Eastern Bloc, the Bulgarian Communist Party sought a leader who could unite factions. Zhivkov emerged as first secretary of the BCP, a compromise candidate perceived as loyal, flexible, and not overly ambitious. Few expected him to last long, but Zhivkov proved an adept survivor. Zhivkov gradually consolidated his authority in the late 1950s and early 1960s. He outmaneuvered rivals, removed potential challengers, and created a strong personal network within the party. A key element of his rule was the cultivation of loyalty. Zhivkov promoted loyalists to high positions and established a patronage system that reinforced his dominance. He also positioned himself as Bulgaria's most loyal ally of the Soviet Union. This alignment was crucial. By supporting Khrushchev's de-Stalinization policies and backing Soviet foreign policy moves, such as the suppression of the Hungarian Revolution in 1956, Zhivkov secured Moscow's trust. This gave him more stability than leaders in countries like Hungary, Poland, or Czechoslovakia, where relations with Moscow were more turbulent. In 1971, Zhivkov consolidated his dominance further when a new constitution created the State Council. He became its chairman, making him not only the party leader, but also the formal head of state. This dual authority cemented his role as Bulgaria's paramount leader, comparable to the positions held by Brezhnev in the USSR or Honecker in East Germany. Zhivkov's Bulgaria was a single-party state modeled on the Soviet Union. The BCP controlled every aspect of public life. Elections were tightly managed, the media was censored, and the state security services monitored dissidents. Political opposition was virtually eliminated, and critics were often imprisoned, silenced, or forced into exile. Yet Zhivkov's system had a somewhat softer image compared to Romania under Ceausescu or Albania under Hoxha. His rule has often been described as paternalistic authoritarianism. He cultivated a populist image, portraying himself as a down-to-earth leader who cared about ordinary Bulgarians. This image, combined with the relative stability of Bulgaria, helped sustain his legitimacy. However, repression remained a constant undercurrent. The infamous revival process of the 1980s, in which the regime forced the ethnic Turkish minority to adopt Bulgarian names and abandon cultural traditions, revealed the darker side of Zhivkov's nationalism. This campaign, widely condemned internationally, created lasting wounds in Bulgarian society. Economically, Zhivkov sought to transform Bulgaria from an agrarian society into a modern industrialized state. With Soviet aid, Bulgaria developed heavy industries, chemicals, machine building, and electronics. By the 1970s, Bulgaria had one of the more diversified economies in the Eastern Bloc. The regime invested heavily in education, science, and technology. Bulgaria became known for its production of computers and electronics, earning it the nickname the Silicon Valley of the Eastern Bloc. Literacy rates soared, healthcare improved, and urbanization transformed the country. Yet this progress was dependent on Soviet subsidies and guaranteed markets. Bulgaria exported goods to the USSR in exchange for cheap energy and raw materials. This relationship cushioned the Bulgarian economy, but also tied it tightly to the fortunes of the Soviet Union. By the 1980s, inefficiencies in central planning, mounting foreign debt, and declining Soviet support created stagnation. Living standards fell, shortages increased, and public dissatisfaction grew. Zhivkov's foreign policy was characterized by absolute loyalty to the Soviet Union. While other Eastern Bloc leaders occasionally defied Moscow, Zhivkov never strayed far from the Kremlin's line. He supported Soviet interventions, including in Czechoslovakia in 1968, and consistently backed the Warsaw Pact. At times, his loyalty bordered on integrationist zeal. On more than one occasion, Zhivkov suggested that Bulgaria might formally join the Soviet Union, though Moscow never accepted such offers. This underscored Bulgaria's unique position as the USSR's most reliable ally. Zhivkov also cultivated ties with the developing world, exporting Bulgarian expertise in education, agriculture, and medicine. This gave Bulgaria some international visibility, though always within the broader framework of Soviet bloc policy. The 1980s brought growing difficulties. Economic stagnation, corruption, and the alienation caused by the revival process weakened Zhivkov's position. Meanwhile, Mikhail Gorbachev's reforms in the USSR, Glasnost and Perestroika, created pressure for change across the Eastern Bloc. Zhivkov, deeply conservative and resistant to reform, appeared increasingly out of touch. In November 1989, as revolutions swept through Eastern Europe, Zhivkov was removed by his own Politburo, led by Petar Mladinov. His resignation came just days after the fall of the Berlin Wall. His departure marked the end of one of the longest communist reigns in Europe. After his ousting, Zhivkov was placed under house arrest and later faced trials for corruption, embezzlement, and abuse of power. These trials symbolized Bulgaria's attempt to break with its communist past. However, due to his advanced age and poor health, Zhivkov served little to no prison time. He lived quietly until his death in 1998, by which time Bulgaria had transitioned into a democratic system. Todor Zhivkov's legacy is deeply contested. Supporters credit him with modernizing Bulgaria, raising literacy and healthcare standards, and ensuring stability during turbulent decades. They argue that, compared to harsher regimes in Eastern Europe, Zhivkov's rule was more pragmatic and less repressive. Critics see him as a symbol of authoritarian stagnation, responsible for suppressing freedom, enforcing assimilation policies against minorities, and binding Bulgaria inextricably to Moscow. His economic model, though stable for a time, collapsed under its own inefficiencies, leaving Bulgaria ill-prepared for the post-communist transition. Ultimately, Zhivkov represents both the promises and the failures of Eastern Bloc socialism, the pursuit of modernization and equality, undermined by authoritarianism, dependence, and resistance to reform. Todor Zhivkov's 3.5 decades in power made him one of the defining figures of Cold War Eastern Europe. His remarkable political longevity owed much to his pragmatism, loyalty to the Soviet Union, and ability to adapt to shifting conditions within the communist world. Yet his refusal to reform, his reliance on repression, and his failure to resolve Bulgaria's economic dependence sealed his downfall. Zhivkov's Bulgaria was a microcosm of the socialist experiment, capable of impressive achievements in education, industry, and social welfare, but ultimately unable to sustain itself without Soviet support, or to reconcile its authoritarian structures with the aspirations of its people. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.